the message is more important than the production. The message is so much more important than the production. What if I just acted as if the message was the most important thing? I'm officially the pastor of the Fourth Church of the Holy Goldfish. It's a joke that keeps on giving, but it really is about taking responsibility for your own spiritual journey. And I thought, I'll just admit to what it is. It's going to be a raggedy podcast, and I'm not going to probably do production and a whole lot of editing. And so there'll be background noise and technical difficulties. But at the core of what my work is about is how do we connect with our heart and with our passions and do the healing work so that we can live differently in a way that feels loving and life embracing. And that's important to me. And that's something I'm passionate about. Like many things that have started in my life, I decided to do a thing called the Holy Goldfish Commentary. It will be a raggedy podcast production. I hope you'll come along the journey. Who knows where it'll take me?
Sometimes it's the small and insignificant things that make a big impression on my life, or at least that's what a recent experience was like. A few weeks ago, I had an experience and it was small. It was really insignificant, but it was impactful. I'll tell you what happened in the story and really what that meant to me in as few words as I possibly can, but I wanted to share. I was on a regular Friday, and in life right now, I have a few standing appointments, and one of them is to gather with my friends at the park and play. We play Frisbee on Fridays, and some weeks I actually get up and get dressed in time to be able to go and meet up with my friends. We pull out the Frisbees, and anyone that's at the park is welcome to come and play with us. And some weeks it's just sitting on the bench, me and some of the other immigrant expats that have moved here from the United States or Europe or other places. And we see who will come and play with us. And every week there's an interesting selection of people. Parents with their children, big kids, grown adults. It just depends on the week and depends on the weather. And a few weeks ago, that was my quest for the day. And as I was getting ready to leave the house, I was probably changing bags, but in one of the bags I had some tissue rolled up. I'm practicing to be a senior citizen, and just having rolled up tissue in your pocketbook just seems like the right thing to do. Your nose might run, or you might go somewhere and need to use the restroom, but it's just a good idea to have some tissue. And so I remember thinking about that and saying, go on and put it in the bag that you're taking, because you never know. You never know when you might need that tissue. Your nose might run, or you have to sneeze or cough or who knows what. And just as one of those very small choices in the day, I put it in there. Really, it was directed at me. You might need it. And I put it in, and it was insignificant. One of those little things that you do, and you don't think it'll make that much of a difference in your day. And I went on with my day. I went on and played with my friends at the park, and then as I left, I went to the bus stop and sat down. There was a young lady sitting next to me, maybe in her 20s, early 20s, young lady. And as we sat there, we were both quiet. I was in my thoughts of the play that I had just had with my friends, and probably thinking about which direction I was going to go home and what I was going to do on the way home. And I heard her sneeze, but I couldn't muster up any response. I don't know how to say bless you, or couldn't think of how to say that at the moment. And so I just sat quietly letting her deal with her sneeze. But about 15 or 20, maybe even 30 seconds later, I heard her very shyly, almost whispering, ask me if I had anything that she could wipe her nose with. As I turned to look at her, I realized that perhaps it was the sneeze, but it had caused her to have a nosebleed. And blood was dripping on her fingers, and it was starting to cover her hand. And the quietness of her voice was almost sounded like embarrassment. And as I, expressed surprise at recognizing what she was saying to me, new situations, sometimes I don't have the words, but I was able to understand what her request was, or at least I thought I did. And immediately I thought about that tissue. That I had made a conscious decision that morning, even though it was a really small decision in my life, to put that tissue in my purse. I reached in, and she needed a little bit of it, not the whole roll, but I thought, I don't need it, and I'm on my way home. Perhaps she was the reason that I felt compelled to put it in my purse that morning. I gave it to her, and she seemed very grateful. And I thought that tissue was so small to me, such a small choice, but a choice I had made consciously. And that perhaps it was for me, but it was for me to be able to meet the need of my friend for the moment, the young lady sitting next to me at the bus stop. I sat there. I was moved by just being able to connect in that small way, and that my little bit of something, little bit of tissue, not a big financial investment, all of probably a penny's worth of tissue. And yet that was everything for her. Had she not had tissue, her nose was bleeding enough that it would have probably caused a disruption in her day. But because of that one little act, and her willingness to act, because I was looking in the other direction, I was looking at the people coming and going and what was happening across the street at the park, I might not have immediately noticed what was happening to be of help or to offer my assistance. Her willingness to ask allowed me to respond much sooner, because I actually had the solution that she needed in that moment. For me, it seemed like an insignificant choice in my day. But for her, it seemed like an important solution to a need that she had. I thought about that all the way home. I thought about that in so many ways in my life where I may see or think of myself or my abilities in the smallness. It's just normal to me. That's just who I am. That's just what I do. And it seems small and insignificant and so unimportant in the scope of the world and everything that's going on. But then realizing that was the thing that met a need for someone else. As I was riding home, I thought about my grandmother. One of the songs that she would sing often was a song by Danny Bell Hall called Ordinary People. And she would emphasize as she would sing that song that it's ordinary people just like me and you, willing to do what they can. She was a Christian, and so it was the ability to do God's will, the ability to do the things that we're divinely guided to do, and perhaps there's some truth in that. As I've grown up, my idea of God has expanded, but what if? That thing that we can't explain, whether it be energy, whether it be a divine being, whether it just be a source that we can't really define, but something magical. I'll call it magic. That compels us in big and small ways Perhaps it was that thing that compelled me to put that tissue in my purse. Because perhaps in a universal way, there was a knowing that someone might cross my path and that my little thing would become much because of my willingness to do. That's what the song was about. That if you place your life in the Master's hand, that your little can become much. We didn't see eye to eye on theology, but we definitely saw eye to eye on music. And that sermon that she preached with that song time and time again resonated with me that afternoon on my bus ride home. How my little, one little decision in my day became the much that I could offer to someone else. And my little might have been everything in that moment for my friend whose name I'll never know. How do I encourage myself? It's seeing these reminders from life that my little can become much when I'm willing to give when the opportunity shows up. That was my assignment that day. It might have been my whole reason to go to the park, or at least one of them. Go to the park. Check. Make sure you put that tissue in your bag. Check. Be willing to give it away. Check. My dad, I think, would be proud. I think in true fashion of Charles Hughes, when I got to the end of the day, to be able to say, yep, I'm at peace with God. Yep, I've done everything I could do to be at peace with others. If I wake up tomorrow, I'll do it again. He would start each day, though, with, I'm alive. It must be on purpose. I guess I'll figure out why. A few weeks ago, my assignment in life was to make sure I had tissue in my pocketbook and be willing to share.